Chicago's talk leader, 89 WLS.
They can take away my life. They can make me out as a monster. They can treat me as a monster, but they can't take away my heart. In my heart, I know I did not do these alleged disgusting acts.
That was Jerry Sandusky, recorded yesterday for the Penn State University radio people. Sentenced this morning to 30 to 60 years in jail. As you remember, he was found guilty of abusing 10 boys over a 15-year period, convicted on 45 counts.
A predatory monster, not redeemable, except perhaps in the eyes of God, and he'll have to deal with that in eternity and never get out of prison.
Jake and John Cass right here. Joining us right now from Pennsylvania is Professor Bruce Ankowiak. He's the Director of Criminology Law and Society Program at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Professor.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Surprise, 30 to 60 years?
Not at all. Not at all. That's generally what I think a lot of us who have been kind of watching the case thought would occur. A Pennsylvania sentence by law has to be phrased that way. There has to be a maximum and a minimum that is one half of the maximum, and so this wasn't just an arbitrary choice of numbers, but this was kind of in the range that people expected.
In federal prison, you have to serve about 85% of your sentence. What in other states, it's you get a day off, good time for a day you serve. What is it in Pennsylvania?
In Pennsylvania, he will be scheduled to serve every day of the minimum. And at that point, he becomes eligible for parole. And at that, are you still there?
Yeah,
of course.
I'm sorry. At that point, the parole board then gets into play. The parole board, though, in a case like this, had his sentence been 15 to 30 years, it would have still been an effective life sentence. The parole board has the authority to not parole and to maintain a prisoner in until they max out of their sentence.
Professor, listeners should know that you're also a longtime prosecutor and lawyer and law enforcement official. In your experience, is there anything that tells us that a child abuser like Sandusky, a molester, could ever be or should ever be released from custody?
The answer to that, I think, is more an answer about social policy and the politics of sentencing. What parole board would ever parole this man? Given the number of victims, the nature of the offenses, and, we have had in Pennsylvania, we've had circumstances where statewide elections for governor have been impacted because of a parole board decision that was turned back on the governor who appointed the people on the parole board. There is just simply no likelihood that individuals such as this would be paroled. I didn't hear this specifically because it just happened here. I would imagine he was also found to be a sexually violent predator.
Correct.
Which, under Pennsylvania law, is a designation that has impact if he would ever get paroled.
It's sort of like in Illinois, we have Jim Ryan, a Republican attorney general, instituted off the sexual violent predator idea, instituted an involuntary civil commitment for those who were reaching the end of their parole.
Well,
do you have that in Pennsylvania?
No, we don't. We have the sexually violent predator is a designation of somebody who would actually get parole. They have to serve a hyper parole where they are required every 4 months to physically report into a state police station to be constantly checked and monitored, located on public websites. And here again, for an individual who has committed a multiple number of these offenses of an extremely violent nature, the likelihood that a parole board would even consider paroling someone with that designation is is almost non-existent. So it is highly unlikely that he will ever have to face the consequences of being a sexually violent predator, because he will never actually get parole in the first place.
What are the odds on his appeal?
I've looked at some of the issues that have been published, and there are none that jump out to me as overwhelming and compelling. Appellate courts do not look at something at a trial as a technical exercise and score points as to whether or not it came close enough to perfection to be deemed a perfect trial. They look at a trial and ask, was it fundamentally fair? Can we have confidence in the outcome of this verdict? If an error occurred, an appellate court is going to ask the question, well, did this error significantly contribute to the outcome of the case? Was it an egregious error that when we look at it, we can't have confidence in the outcome of this case because of this? They're going to raise the issue of being pushed to go to trial earlier than they wanted. In the abstract, that's not an issue that's going to go very far. The greater question is going to be, well, what could you have done if you had more time? Can you show specifically how you were prejudiced by that? And if you can't, then, and unfortunately, there's not going to be much for relief there. They're making an argument about the prosecutor's closing argument. There are many, many cases in Pennsylvania about prosecutorial closing arguments, and a few of them, a very few, constitute reversible error.
All right.
Because many times the prosecutor's comment is simply a response to an argument a defendant made.
All right. With that,
Sometimes
Professor,
the prosecutor's comment is simply, the word Pennsylvania court uses, proper oratorical flair. Prosecutors don't have to be dull in their closing arguments. So, in this case, none of the issues that I have seen, at least, and I haven't studied the transcript or anything else, but none of those issues seem to me to be so striking that I would comfortably say to you this conviction would be in doubt.
with that, Professor, we're going to thank you for coming on for a few minutes, and we appreciate your time this morning, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye. Professor Bruce Ankowiak, he's Director of Criminology Law and Society program at St. Vincent College. He had covered this, and you heard it. It doesn't look like there's going to be a good appeal.
And he's in for life.
And he's in for life. Your thoughts, 591-8900, 9:45, time for traffic right here in 89 WLS.
Get the latest on the race from your Common Sense election headquarters, 89 WLS.
A young man who was dramatic, a veteran accuser, and always sought attention, started everything. He was joined by a well-orchestrated effort of the media, investigators, the system, Penn State, psychologists, civil attorneys, and other accusers. They won. I've wondered what they really won. Attention, financial gain, prestige will all be temporary.
9:51, Chicago's talk leader, 89 WLS, on the air and on iHeartRadio. It may be temporary for them in his view, but it's going to be long-term for him.
You know what? A typical, pathological abuser of children, it's all their fault, Mr. Sandusky. When you go to prison and you're begging to be locked in protective custody so they don't cut your throat, then you can talk about how it was the boy's fault. Meanwhile, there's another issue on this. I'd like to bring it up. You put Sandusky away, it's all done. It's over. Let's go back to football, rah-rah, zis, boom, bah. I don't think so. You've got the university president, Graham Spanier, resigned in November. Athletic director Tim Curley and senior vice president Gary Schultz also resigned and face separate trials on the charges that they perjured themselves to a grand jury, obstructed justice. I think, and Penn State's playing football now. Don't you think it would have been best if they just canceled the damn program? Just cancel it? I mean, I don't see how they could do this. I don't see how they could do it except that it's all about money and what the alumni want.
There was a very large group of former players that all throughout the investigation and the trial were really big public supporters of Penn State and Coach Paterno. They just didn't get it. They didn't seem to get it.
No, and you see that, there's advertising money there, there's beer to sell, there's college football, there's Keith Jackson rumbling, bumbling, stumbling. I love college football. I love watching Notre Dame. I love listening to them on 89. But this Penn State thing bothers me. I can't see this happening at Notre Dame at all. This Penn State thing, they're just washing it away. They should just cancel the whole football program.
You have to. You can't say, and not. I'm not throwing anything at Notre Dame, right. But after this, I don't think you can't say
right?
You can't say guarantee anything of anything anymore.
You know what? You can't.
I mean, a year ago, would you have thought Penn State would have been where we are today?
No.
I mean, all this broke in November.
And you know what part of it is? And we're both dads who have sons that played sports and competitive sports. How many of us really watch those coaches? The ones that want to, I can really help your son, or he just needs to work a little bit on this or that. We've been lucky to have good coaches in their lives, but how many parents sometimes forget to be always vigilant even then, even when they're 8, 9 years old, especially.
To be sure.
Just look them right in the eye and watch them like hawks, always.
9:54, John Cass, Jake Hartford, back right after this.
89 WLS. On your way to work and on your way home, get traffic and weather first on the 5s when you need it most. 89 WLS.
John Cass, Jake Hartford in for Bruce and Dan, talking about the Sandusky sentencing. Vince in the car, you got last word.
Hey, Vince.
Vince, you there?
I really think that we need to get over this. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that kids pay for tuitions. They get their degrees from the school. They had nothing to do with it. They've got the people that were involved, and they made an example out of them. And, it's just like Northern University when there's a shooting on the campus or something else happens. They don't shut down the school.
The campus didn't cover it up.
And I hope that's what happens.
Thanks, Vince, but the school officials didn't cover up the shooting. The school officially covered up this. There should be no football. Football is a privilege, not a right.
But basically, the football program, they've taken away a whole bunch of scholarships in the future for the kids who aren't there and aren't going to be coming there. So the kids that are there playing now signed up before this happened, and the argument was why should they be punished? Anyway, this hour is gone. We have one more hour to go. Bruce and Dan are gone. It's John and Jake in for them on 89 WLS.